Hi, this is our web app Spotifriends. I'm May,
And I'm Ethan.
and we're going to tell you a little bit more about our project. So first, as an introduction, what is Spotifriends? So this is a web app where users are able to log in with their Spotify account, comment on their friends' playlists, react with emojis, view other people's profiles, pin their favorite songs, artists, and playlists, as well as generate a view of their listening statistics. So the purpose of this web app is to kind of provide a more social aspect to Spotify by really focusing in on user interaction. We really wanted to make it easy to see what your friends are listening to, who their favorites are, as well as share your own favorites with your friends. Our website is kind of like an extension of, and as well as an addition to Spotify's current features, all put together in one single place.
So a few notes and prefaces before we start talking about the project itself. One of our group members dropped right before the midterm. So we originally had 5 members, but one of them dropped right before the midterm. So aside from like the initial project planning, um, we were mainly working with 4 people, and RTA just told us to include that in our presentation just to be kept account of. And also our Git commit history might be a little bit weird for this project because we were all initially working on our own remote branches. And then towards the end, once we had gotten everything working, that's when we finally pushed the big one onto master. So it might not look like a lot of people have a lot of commits, but we did all put in a decent amount of work for this project. And if you're interested in running our app, you can the place to run it will be either on the README or in the submission file, or an authentication token can be given if requested. But if you have any issues running it, just let us know. So for our tech stack, for the front end, we use React with TypeScript, and for the back end, we use Node.js with Express using a Next.js framework. As for our database, we use PostgreSQL, which is a relational database that we use to store comments, notes, pin songs, and a lot of different components that we use in our web app. And for that, we use Prisma as an ORM, or an object relational mapping, to our front end. And additionally, we use Auth0 to handle the authentication, the Spotify API used to fetch data from Spotify and make different API calls, and we use Vercel for hosting our app.
So to speak a little bit more about authentication, we used Auth0, which is used to fetch a user Spotify token, and the web application then uses Spotify's OAuth 2.0 authorization code flow. So integrating Auth0 with the Spotify API allows users to log in with their Spotify accounts and enables the application to fetch user-specific data. This would involve redirecting the user to Spotify's authorization URL to first grant permissions. It would then receive an authorization code and then exchange this code for an access token, which is finally used to access the Spotify API securely.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about the main features of our app. So we have the 3 features with a few additional features that kind of build off them. So our features are the ability to pin tracks, artists, and playlists, a page for the social playlists, a page for listening statistics, a page for like friends and profile, and also the ability to view friends' recently played tracks on the homepage.
To talk a bit about our first feature, which is pinning, this is the ability for users to save tracks, artists, and playlists to their profile page, as well as display this reflectively on their homepage. So right now, the limit is set to a maximum of 5 pins per category so that the page will display an error message to the user if they attempt to pin too many items all at the same time. And then users are able to unpin directly from their profile page. To talk a bit more about the implementation, users first search for the items that they would like to pin using the search feature in our navbar. We created server-side functions that interact with the database to store both the user's ID as well as the pinned items in tables, and then the pin results should then automatically render on the profile and home pages for the user.
Our next feature is the social playlist feature. So this is kind of like the playlist feature that you see on Spotify, just with a few added features that kind of take advantage of the database and the Spotify API that we were able to use. So some of these features are the like the ability to add notes to songs, or the ability to add comments or reactions to playlists. So for our database, we use this for the comments, reactions, ratings, and notes. So we stored comments, notes, ratings, and reactions in our database, which tracked each item with its respective user ID and username, as well as a process ID and a playlist name. And we compiled an average rating as well as a comment layout that fetched from the database. So for each of these items, the database schema looked a little bit different depending on what we needed to fetch from the database. But generally for all of them, it kind of mapped each feature to its specific playlist so that when that specific playlist was like loaded up or routed from the playlist page, then it would have like the reactions, the ratings, the comments, everything ready to view. Our next part of social playlists was the API calls. So this basically used the Spotify API to get API calls for tracks and playlist information, as well as for data or to fetch data from the current users. And basically we uploaded this into our database as well to load things like songs, playlists, and we use this throughout our app. And we wrote API functions along with our database functions and front-end components. The last part is just the components and front-end part of this. So we stored each page component in its respective component just for organization reasons. And we also use server-side rendering to communicate between the client and server end of the project.
So our third feature of our app is listening statistics. So for this, it would display the user's top tracks, top artists, and lastly, the recently played history. So this would display the top 50 results for each category. And then for top tracks and artists, the user is then able to filter throughout different time periods with options to display the last 4 weeks, the last 6 months, as well as the last 12 months of their listening histories. For the implementation of listening statistics, it really depended a lot on the Spotify web API to fetch user data and get the user's listening history. So once the user is authenticated successfully with Auth0, the stats page would then dynamically render to generate a visual representation of all the user statistics. And then for our fourth feature is implementing friends, which is searching for friends, adding, as well as unadding friends. So users are able to search for other authenticated users within our web app using the search bar at the top. And then from there, they are able to add a friend. And then if they would like to remove a friend, they can go back to their profile page to do so. The implementation for this requires a search function to query the database for users based on what the user is inputting into the search bar. So then it displays search results dynamically in a drop-down bar, allowing users to scroll through and add the friends that they wish to do so. And then for adding friends, we implemented Prisma's connect method to establish a relationship between the current user and then the selected friend that they would wish to add in the database. For unadding friends, we really made sure to ensure bidirectional removal by updating both ends. So that means the user's end as well as the friend's friend list to reflect the change on both sides.
Our next feature was the Friends Recents, and this is kind of modeled after an app called Airbuds. But it's basically a feature where you can view the recent songs that your friends have been listening to. So, kind of like in the middle of our homepage, it displays a scrollable view of a user's friend's most recently played songs. And basically how it works is there's the pinned items on one side, there's the users recently listened on the other side, and in the middle, that should be where you can scroll and see what songs that your friends have been recently listening to. So the way we implemented this was it basically just looked through the recently played songs for other profiles using the API, and we were able to access and store these as data through the database so that we could render it onto the page. So again, it uses a Spotify API to access data through API endpoints and calls. And it's also used as a way for users to interact with their friends and also just as a way that the app can be used as a platform for multiple people instead of just being a way where you can like add notes to your own songs, and just things that you can do on your own.
So we wanted to go over a general overview of our website structure, as well as all the different pages that it entails. So at the top, when you go into our website, you would first see the nav bar, and then this is just like a way for you to access all the different pages in one area. So this would include first the logo on the left-hand bar, as well as all the way on the right-hand side is a profile picture, and then in between we have links to the playlist page, the stats page, as well as a search bar, which you can use to search for tracks, artists, and friends. And then we would have the home page, which is the landing page, and this would be this would have recently listened to songs, your users' pinned songs and playlists, as well as a profile. The profile page would include an image, a description of the user's playlist ratings, as well as the user's pinned songs and playlists. And then for the playlist page, we have the features for adding comments, reactions, ratings, notes for the playlist, as well as the existing info and all the songs that are actually added into the playlist already. And then for the stats page, lastly, we have just an overview for listening statistics, as well as recently played songs and artists.
So for the implementation of our app, we used a lot of different things, but I'm kind of just going to be breaking it down into different components. So the first one is the database. So we created database schemas that mapped elements of our items to a schema. And again, the schema kind of just depended on what we were trying to fetch. And then we also had functions that fetch data from the database and also inserted it into our database, and functions that got and like searched through the database in the backend. The next thing was a Spotify API. So this is functions that fetch data from the API, such as user and playlist data, and also functions that get things like Spotify client IDs, authentication, and other things from the API working all along with the OAuth. Finally, we have the front end and the back end. So this uses Next.js and TypeScript, and this works with server-side rendering to communicate between the front and the back end of our project. Finally, we use CSS. We took advantage of the CSS styling in the JavaScript classes and components for the different page items and front end things that we needed to get done in our project.
So to go over a bit about the challenges of our project, the first one was OAuth. It was really hard for us to get OAuth to work at first. We ran into a lot of authentication issues and issues with both the client and refresh tokens. Um, and then next, one of our other difficulties was server-side rendering. So this would entail rendering data between the front end and the back end. And this was kind of tough since none of us were really familiar with utilizing this at first, and we had to differentiate between client and server-side functions and really know when to use each of them and overall just keep the code organized. And then our last challenge would be implementing the database schema. So the schema had to match the data we had in our code and to our database functions, and we had to frequently update the schema to make sure that everything would fit together properly.
Finally, our improvements were we had to, in the future, we would want to add images into the playlist page. So be able to like insert images in between songs. Also try to improve certain aspects of the UI, such as making dark mode an option. And we could also try using like a bit of a simpler authentication than Auth0 next time because it was kind of hard to figure out. And finally, we could try to add a messaging feature where users can message others.
So now we will go into our demo.
So we're going to be showing you a quick demonstration of our app. So when you open up localhost 3000, this is the website that you'll see. And when you click continue with Spotify, it'll send an authorization token to Auth0 and Spotify, which will then log you into our app. So on our homepage, you can see on the left, we have pinned songs, pinned artists, and pinned playlists. And when you click the Spotify icon or hover over it, it turns green. And when you open it, you'll open up the song, playlist, or artist in the Spotify app itself. Moving on to the middle, you can see all of your friends and what they've been playing before. You can kind of see, and you can also play it on Spotify by hovering over that button. Additionally, if you go to the left, you see the top 5 songs of the month, your top 5 artists of the month, and your 5 most recently played. Also, if you hover over these, you can obviously, click this link and go to Spotify. Then if you go to the playlist tab on the left, you can view one of your playlists. And then this one of your playlists, it has both ratings from users, and then it also has things like notes. If you click the notes icon, you can see things like notes that we've left previously. You can also edit these notes, and then it will immediately open up when you click the note again. It will save to that to the database. You can then also scroll through all the songs, and again, the Spotify icon on the right sends you a link to go play the song in Spotify. Additionally, if you click like the country playlist, for example, you can then see comments that other users may have left for your playlists. So if you open up the Show Comments tab, you'll see a comment that a user has left before. What's up? And you can also add comments yourself. So if you type in your message, click Enter, or the send icon, it will add the comment at the bottom right there. And then we can go to the stats page. You can also, the stats page has your top tracks, top artists, and your recently played. So we click the top tracks, it will show you your top 50 tracks for the last 4 weeks. Then if you can also set the time limits to be different, 6 months, as well as your last 12 months. Then you can also see your top artists with, again, a very similar interface, and then your recently played as well. Finally, then we can go to the profile page. And the profile page allows you to unpin songs, unpin playlists, and also unpin artists. It also has your friends, and you can also unpin or add your friends. You can also edit your bio. And it will save it. And then if you go to the search bar, this is where most of the stuff will be done. So you can type in a search result, and you can see if you want to pin it, and this is a song that you've already pinned, it'll tell you a duplicate pin. But if you click White Ferrari, for example, it'll give you a success. If you click Ivy by Taylor Swift, it will also give you success. Then pink plus white, and then here over, it will give you a limit exceeded. You can also go to artists, it'll search by artists, playlists, and users. If you type in users, if you type in a user that exists on our database, and then it will show you a user that exists, and you can add him as a friend, and it will show up over there. This is a quick demonstration of our app and how it works in total. Thank you.